Our fathers gave us many laws, which they had learned from their fathers. They told us to treat all men as they treated us, that we should never be the first to break a bargain, that it was a disgrace to tell a lie, that we should speak only the truth. We were taught to believe that the Great Spirit sees and hears everything, and that He never forgets. This I believe, and all my people believe the same. Hin Matuyalat caked.
By 1877, most Nez Perce were living on a reservation along the Clearwater River in western Idaho. Many had converted to Christianity, wore white men's clothes, and had taken up farming. But some refused to move onto the reservation. Among them was a band that lived in the beautiful Wallowa Valley of eastern Oregon. Their village chief, responsible for the overall welfare of his people, was a tall, reserved man whose Nez Perce name, Hinmatu Yalatkekt, meant thunder rolling from the mountains. Whites called him Chief Joseph. He was still a young man when he promised his dying father that he would never sell their homeland. And for 6 years, he had refused to move onto the reservation, to comply with a treaty his band of Nez Perce had never signed.
Do not misunderstand me and my affection for the land. I never said the land was mine to do with as I chose. The one who has the right to dispose of it is the one who has created it. I claim a right to live on my land and accord you the privilege to live on yours. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. Chief Joseph.
We do not wish to interfere with your religion, but must talk about practicable things. 20 times over you repeat that the earth is your mother. Let us hear no more, but come to business at once. General Oliver O. Howard.
General Oliver Otis Howard was a one-armed Civil War hero who had run the Freedmen's Bureau and founded Howard University for emancipated blacks in Washington, D.C. Now he was dispatched to deal with the Nez Perce. Howard became convinced that the Indians were right about the treaty and wrote the War Department to say so.
I think it is a great mistake to take the valley from Joseph and his band. Possibly Congress can be induced to let these peaceable Indians have this valley for their own.
Howard offered to buy the Wallowa Valley, but Joseph refused to sell it. Now, Washington ordered Howard to move the Nez Perce, one way or another. He told Joseph and the others that if they weren't on the reservation in Lapwai, Idaho within a month, his soldiers would force them to go there.
I knew I had never sold my country, and that I had no land in Lapwai. But I did not want bloodshed. I did not want my people killed. I did not want anybody killed. I said in my heart that rather than have war, I would give up everything, rather than have the blood of white men upon the hands of my people.
Joseph and the other chiefs began moving their people. But a handful of young warriors, seeking revenge for the way their people had been treated, slipped away and killed 18 white settlers. For the first time in their history, Joseph's people found themselves at war with the Americans.
I knew we were too weak to fight the United States. We had many grievances, but I knew that war would bring more.
Howard sent Captain David Perry and 2 troops of cavalry to bring the young warriors and the rest of the Nez Perce in, and confidently wired his superiors, "Think we will make short work of it." At Whitebird Canyon on the Salmon River, Perry attacked. The Nez Perce hurled them back.
Those soldiers did not hold their position 10 minutes. Some soldiers were quickly on the run. Then the entire enemy force gave way. We counted 33 dead soldiers. We did no scalping. We did not strip them naked. We did not hurt the dead, only let them lie.
Only 3 Nez Perce warriors had been wounded in the battle, but Perry had lost a third of his command and been driven from the field. "I have been in lots of scrapes," one Army scout remembered, "but I never went up against anything like the Nez Perce in all my life." News of the stunning defeat at Whitebird Canyon, almost 1 year after Custer's death at the Little Bighorn, shocked the country. Howard called for more troops. For the next 3 months, seeking some place where the soldiers would not follow, the Nez Perce would lead the United States Army on one of the most remarkable pursuits in military history. On July 3rd, the Nez Perce wiped out an Army scouting party of 13 men that got too close. On Independence Day, they fought off an attack at an old stage stop called Cottonwood. A week later, on the Clearwater River, they killed 13 more of Howard's men who sought to stop them. Then they began climbing the Bitterroot Mountains, led by a war chief named Lookingglass, following the same trail that had brought Lewis and Clark to them 3/4 of a century earlier. There were about 700 of them, only 200 warriors, the rest women, children, and old people, all in Joseph's care. Still, they moved quickly, believing that if they could make it to Montana and join their allies, the Crow, they would be safe. When they reached Montana, the Nez Perce turned south along the Bitterroot River, paying for food and supplies from white settlers. But the frightened townspeople of Missoula, Butte, Bannock, and Virginia City demanded Army protection. On an elevated plateau surrounded by mountains called the Big Hole, Lookingglass convinced the weary Indians they could rest for several days. Howard, he said, was too far behind them to worry about. But Colonel John Gibbon had assembled all the available soldiers in western Montana, and with the help of Bannock's scouts, tracked the unsuspecting Nez Perce to the Big Hole.
The trail led us along the bluffs overlooking the brush-covered valley. And as we moved stealthily forward, I could hear a cautious whisper, "There they are. Look." And the main camp of our enemies was as plainly in sight as the dim starlight permitted. Colonel John Gibbon.
The troops attacked at dawn. In the first moments, between 60 and 90 Nez Perce were cut down, many of them dead before they could kick free of their blankets. But the survivors regrouped, women and children and old men fighting alongside the warriors with such fury that they drove the soldiers from the camp.
Few of us will soon forget the wail of mingled grief, rage, and horror which came from the camp 400 or 500 yards from us when the Indians returned to it and recognized their slaughtered warriors, women, and children. Above this wail of horror, we could hear the passionate appeal of the leaders urging their followers to fight, and the war whoops in answer which boded us no good.
The enraged warriors pinned Gibbon's men down with their fire, while Joseph led the others away from the fighting. The Nez Perce slipped back into Idaho, then turned east again toward the Yellowstone Plateau, which had recently been set aside as a national park. William Tecumseh Sherman himself had assured visitors there was no danger. Indians, he said, were too superstitious to venture near the geysers. But the Nez Perce swept right into the park. They captured more than a dozen horrified tourists and killed 2 of them before the chiefs told the warriors to let the others go. The Indians moved on, still hoping to join forces with their longtime friends, the Crow, and to find a country somewhere free of whites. But the Crow were now pursuing them on behalf of the army, stealing horses, killing stragglers.
Many snows the Crows have been our friends, but now turned enemies. I do not understand how the Crows could think to help the soldiers. My heart was just like fire.
The Nez Perce were alone. The West they had once known had vanished. Now they fastened on one last chance for escape. The Lakota chief Sitting Bull had found safety in Canada. They would head north across Montana to join him. They crossed the Yellowstone River, then the Musselshell, and finally, in late September, the Missouri. They had come more than 1,500 miles, fought in 17 engagements against more than 2,000 soldiers and Indian scouts, suffered hardships, disappointments, and the loss of loved ones. But they had beaten or eluded every army sent against them. The whole Nez Perce movement, one U.S. Army officer marveled, is unequaled in the history of Indian warfare. Now, Canada and freedom were only 40 miles away. Before crossing the border, the Nez Perce stopped to camp on Snake Creek, near the Bear Paw Mountains. General Howard, they knew, was more than 2 days' march behind them. But unknown to them, Colonel Nelson A. Miles had mercilessly pushed his own 5th Infantry and Custer's old command, the 7th Cavalry, all the way from eastern Montana to intercept the Nez Perce. With him rode Lakota and Cheyenne warriors, who just a year before had defeated the 7th at the Little Bighorn.
The Nez Perce were quietly slumbering in their tents. When the charge was made, the tramp of at least 600 horses over the prairie fairly shook the ground. And although a complete surprise to the Indians in the main, it must have given them a few minutes' notice, for as the troops charged against the village, the Indians opened a hot fire upon them. Colonel Nelson A. Miles.
Nez Perce warriors drove off one attack, then a second, and a third. They killed or wounded 53 of the soldiers. But all their horses had been driven off. They could not escape. Miles dug in for a siege. The weather turned colder.
Most of our few warriors left from the Big Hole had been swept as leaves before the storm. A young warrior, wounded, lay on a buffalo robe dying without complaint. Children crying with cold,
no fire. There could be no light. Everywhere the crying, the death wail. I felt the coming end, all for which we had suffered, lost. Thoughts came of the Wallowa, where I grew up, of my own country when only Indians were there, of teepees along the bending river, of the blue, clear lake, wide meadows with horse and cattle herds. From the mountain forest, voices seemed calling. I felt as dreaming, not my living self.
For 5 more days, the siege went on. A few Nez Perce slipped behind the lines and straggled into Canada. Sitting Bull welcomed them, but would send no force to rescue the others. Under a white flag, Miles opened negotiations. Joseph was selected to talk with him. "Turn over your rifles," Miles said, "and in the spring, you will be allowed to return home."
My people were divided about surrendering, but I could not bear to see my wounded men and women suffer any longer. We had lost enough already. Colonel Miles promised that we might return to our own country with what stock we had left. I thought we could start again. I believed Colonel Miles, or I never would have surrendered.
On the afternoon of October 5th, 1877, Joseph rode out to the foot of a bluff on the prairie. Colonel Miles and General Howard were waiting for him.
Joseph threw himself off his horse, draped his blanket about him, and with a quiet pride, not exactly defiance, advanced toward General Howard and held out his rifle in token of submission. Lieutenant Charles Erskine Wood.
I am tired of fighting. Our chiefs are all killed. Looking Glass is dead. The old men are all dead. It is cold, and we have no blankets. The little children are freezing to death. My people, some of them, have run away to the hills and have no food. No one knows where they are. I want to have time to look for my children and see how many of them I can find. Maybe I shall find them among the dead. Hear me, my chiefs. I am tired. My heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more, forever.
Joseph and his people were loaded onto a riverboat and sent down the Missouri River toward Fort Abraham Lincoln in Dakota Territory, where they expected to spend the winter. But while they were on the way, Miles and Howard's promise that they would be allowed to return home had been overruled by General Sherman.
The Indians throughout displayed a courage and skill that elicited universal praise. They abstained from scalping, let captive women go free, did not commit indiscriminate murder of peaceful families, which is usual, and fought with almost scientific skill. Nevertheless, they would not settle down on land set apart for them, and when commanded by proper authority, they began resistance by murdering persons in no manner connected with their alleged grievances. They should never again be allowed to return to Oregon. General William Tecumseh Sherman.
Miles and Howard could not change Sherman's decision. The Nez Perce had been betrayed again. When the Indians arrived at the fort, its cannon greeted them. and the steam engine of a Northern Pacific train blasted its whistle 3 times. They had never seen a train before, and the Nez Perce began a mournful song. It sounded, one onlooker said, like a death chant. Then Joseph and his people were loaded onto the train. They were not going home, they were now told, but far away, into exile in the northeastern corner of Indian Territory, in what is now Oklahoma, nearly 2,000 miles from their beloved Wallowa Valley. Once there, they found conditions unsanitary, medicine scarce. 68 of them perished in the first year alone. Soon, they had a cemetery set aside solely for babies, with 100 graves. Among the Nez Perce who died was an old man named Halatukit, or Daytime Smoke. According to Joseph's people, he was the half-Indian son of William Clark, the American explorer the Nez Perce had sheltered more than 70 years earlier. The man who had first promised that the United States would always be their friend.
Good words do not last long. Good words do not pay for my dead people. They do not pay for my country, now overrun by white men. Good words will not get my people a home where they can live in peace and take care of themselves. I am tired of talk that comes to nothing. It makes my heart sick when I remember all the good words and broken promises. You might as well expect the rivers to run backward as that any man who was born a free man should be contented when penned up and denied liberty to go where he pleases. Chief Joseph.